Well, here we are yet again at the end of another year. 2022 has flown by, and just like last year, I kind of wanted to do a best of list. And just like last year, I have a bunch of games that I just have not played from this year. So, you're not going to see God of War, you're not going to see Horizon on this list mostly because I just don't really care. Those games don't interest me at all. So, you're going to be seeing kind of the games that I play. So this is a personal list, obviously. I'm going to start, just like I did last year, with some honorable mentions, games that I don't really think fit into a top 5 or whatever list. I don't even have a top 5 this year. I think it's like 3 or 4. So, first off, with the honorable mentions is a game that it's going to be kind of weird to talk about because I don't want to spoil it. I played this early on in the summer, and I recorded it. I played the entire game in 2 sittings. I recorded it. I uploaded all the videos, and they are going to start in January. I'm very excited for that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. It's a game that I feel like people are going to... It's a game that I feel like I really wouldn't have played if I didn't feel like recording it and doing that. I literally probably would not have played this. It is a franchise that I'm burnt out on and I don't really care about anymore. I enjoyed it while playing it. I haven't really thought about it since. This will make sense once you see what it is. As I said, those videos are going to go up in January. It's going to be the first playthrough of 2023. I can't really say much more about that. The next one is Sonic Origins, which came out in June, the day after my birthday, actually. It's basically exactly what it should have been, but it had a lot of problems. Like, Sonic Origins, really all I wanted out of it was the ability to play Sonic 1, 2, and 3 in full screen, no letterbox, a full screen version of those games. And that's basically what they are. They really don't have anything else to them other than that. The new animated cutscenes are very adorable, very good. I quite like them. I like that every game now has those cutscenes like Sonic CD has. I think it's lovely. There were a lot of very bad technical issues at the start when it first came out, which kind of hindered the experience and why it isn't really higher up on this list of honorable mentions. The next honorable mention is the Capcom Fighting Collection, which I was really excited about when they announced it, because it has all of the Darkstalkers games on it, which is fantastic. Darkstalkers, one of my favorite fighting game franchises ever. I no longer have to dig out my PS3 to play the Darkstalkers collection on that. I can just, put it on my Switch, play it in handheld mode, play it on the TV. It's great. It's a really great resource just for that. And, a lot of the other games on there are really cool too, but for the most part, Darkstalkers is why I bought that. And that game came out, I want to say, either the same day as Sonic Origins or maybe a couple days later. And it really did show how much more work Capcom puts into those collections than Sega did. Because it's pretty sterile in Sonic Origins. It's like just a 3D environment with some 3D models, most likely reused from Generations and other games. And then you pop in the Capcom Fighting Collection, and it's oozing personality. It's got great, hip-hop, lo-fi beats in the background. It's got a cool aesthetic in the back. It's just cool. There's a lot of nice options for how you want to play the games, full screen, how they were intended in the letterbox. And I did find that Puzzle Fighter is now maybe one of my favorite games. I love that. I've been playing that a lot. Just in handheld mode, I'll be watching something and just playing that. So I've put a ton of time into just that, and that was a lot of fun. So I really like the Capcom Fighting Collection. And then the next up is Nier Automata on the Switch. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite games of all time. And having it on the Switch is great. Falling asleep at night, I'll just lay down, put my headphones on, play it in handheld mode. It's super impressive that they were able to get Nier Automata onto the Switch. And then it runs good, it looks good, and there's not really much else to say about that. there's, as far as I know, I don't think there are really any new like additions in that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there might be like a touch thing. If you touch the pod, there's like an animation, or if you touch 2B, there's like an animation. And I think there's motion controls, but don't quote me on that. I don't know about that. So, not really much else to say about that. The next one is in the exact same vein of, it's one of my favorite games of all time. If I were to redo my top 10 games of all time list, this would probably be on it. And that would be Persona 5 on the Switch. It's just a damn good game. Same thing as Nier Automata, I've just been having fun. You know, turn the lights off, lay down, put my headphones on, and just play it in handheld mode. Which is the appeal, obviously, of getting these games again. Like, I would never in a million years buy Nier Automata on the Switch and then play it on my TV. If I want to play it on my TV, I'll play the PS4 version, thank you very much. I want to play it in handheld mode while I'm going to sleep, while I'm on a plane, while I'm in a train, while I'm in a car, while driving all of those things, by the way. I'll be driving a plane, and I'll be playing Nier Automata, or Persona 5, on the Switch, so that's just the appeal of those, really. And then the last honorable mention is Pokemon Violet. The only reason that this isn't on the, like, top 5 or anything like that is because I just recently got COVID. Basically the week that this game came out, or the week after the game came out, and I saw all of these things online, people saying how horrible this game is, how it looks like shit, it runs like shit, and that there's glitches, and the glitches are just really goofy looking, and it makes the experience of playing it not fun. And that gave me flashbacks to Cyberpunk 2077, which I was not anticipating, I wasn't looking forward to, I wasn't planning on buying it until it came out, and it was a gigantic mess. And then I said, I need to play this. This game looks like a mess. I bet I will have fun with this. And I did. And I ended up loving Cyberpunk 2077 because I saw a couple of videos of weird glitches. So I did the same thing with Pokemon Violet. I had COVID. I had it delivered to me like in a day. So I just sat there and played it for like 3 days. Had a lot of fun with it. It runs like garbage. It looks like a Dreamcast game. That doesn't really matter to me because the experience in and of itself is quite fun. I didn't play Arceus, so a lot of the like big open areas and stuff is new to me. I just ended up having fun with it. I haven't finished it yet. I probably will at some point. I think it's the best Pokemon game since Pokemon Black, which is my favorite Pokemon game. If you can look past the technical stuff, I think it's a damn good game. I haven't encountered literally a single glitch, which was very disappointing for me. Because Cyberpunk 2077, when that came out, that was Glitch City. Night City, more like Glitch City. You couldn't, walk down the street without something weird happening. So, I quite enjoyed the time that I spent with Pokemon Violet, and I'm looking forward to playing it some more. But now let's move on to the actual meat of this, which would be my top games of the year. Which, again, pretty slim pickings. I feel like I didn't really play a whole lot this year, I guess. Not new games. Same with last year. A lot of times I'll go back and play a game I've been meaning to play that came out like 10 years ago, and I'll play that instead of, picking up the newest game. I'm not going to pick up God of War Ragnarok because I got to check out Final Fight Streetwise. But actually, you know what? I do have a King honorable mention. I don't think it came out this year. The specific version that I played, I don't think came out this year. But it's, I think, the game that I played the most this year and enjoyed the most this year. So if I were to crown, like, a game of the year this year, in terms of a game that I played this year, but it didn't come out this year, would have to be Disco Elysium. I picked it up on Switch and instantly fell in love with it. I mean, it's a game that just speaks to me on so many different levels. It's an RPG, like a top-down RPG, like a classic type, which I've never played before. It's half that, half visual novel, half detective thing, half political thing, whatever. But I loved it. It was, I think, the game that I put the most hours into this year. I just immediately fell in love with it, and I'm going to be thinking about Disco Elysium for a long, long, long time, and it's a shame what happened to that studio. Basically, like, the week after I finished it, all that stuff came out, and I was like, man, that's a bummer. So now for the actual games that came out this year, that I played this year. There's only 4 of them, so this is going to be a top 4, not a top 5. So number 4 doesn't even really count, is the Shadows of Rose DLC from Resident Evil 8, which I just finished a playthrough of. I think it was a lot of fun. It works as its own little epilogue to Resident Evil 8, which I think is a lot of fun. It introduces a lot of new gameplay mechanics, especially towards the end, that I think are really interesting, and I would love to see formed into a full game, but will probably not happen. It's not quite as good as, I would say, the cream of the crop of Resident Evil DLCs, which would be number 1, would be Lost in Nightmares from Resident Evil 5. That's the best one. They've never topped that one. Then the second one would be End of Zoe from Resident Evil 7, which is basically the same thing. It's an epilogue to the main game. It lets you kind of fight the main villain of the game, like, again, and just introduces some new cool gameplay mechanics, like the gauntlets that let you punch alligators, or Rose's cool powers. So I think it was worth a shot. There's a part in it that is just as good as anything that's in the main game, if not maybe even a little bit better. I would say you probably know what part I'm talking about. So yeah, not really much else to say about that. It's a solid DLC. So the next game, number 2 out of 4, and this is going down. Shadows of Rose was 4, this is 3. Was a game that, when it came out, I played so much. I fell in love with it. I for sure thought that there was no way any game for the rest of the year could beat it out. Like, I was convinced from the time that this game came out, which was pretty early in the year, until just around, like, November, like, October, November-ish, I thought for sure was going to be my game of the year. And that is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This was a series that needed very heavily to move away from what it was doing and do something new. The series kind of had a renaissance with Return to Dreamland, and then all the other games were kind of just variations of that. From Return to Dreamland to Star Allies, it was getting pretty samey, and I remember liking Star Allies but not loving it because it just felt too similar to all the other things that they were putting out. So the series really needed to change, and Forgotten Land was the best possible thing that they could have done. I thought originally the trailers made it look like it was going to be like Mario Odyssey but with Kirby, when in actuality it's more like Super Mario 3D World with Kirby, which I think is so good. The missions in the game are fun. They're really fun to play just on their own, but then they have all these little like stipulations in them, like, hey, find all the Waddle Dees, find this hidden thing, do this level without getting hit, do this level without using a power, use this specific power. I love stuff like that. That's why I love Captain Toad. That's why I love Mario 3D World. That's why I love all those games that are set up like that. My brain just lights up. And I'm super into that kind of a game, where you can play through a level and move on to the next level, or you could play a level and then play it again, but try and do all the hidden stuff. Try and do all the other stuff that's in that level. So I love that game. There's so much content in that game. That game has like 4 different times where you think, oh, the game's over now. There's nothing else to do. And then you realize, oh wait, there actually is way more stuff to do. So, a fully content-packed game. Wonderful. I can't wait to see what they do with Kirby next. I think it was one of those games that you play it and I was just thinking the whole time while playing it, this is why I like video games. A video game like this is what I play video games for. I think it's good, and I'm kind of blown away by the fact that this isn't my number 1 game of the year, and that there were 2 games that were better than it. But speaking of, my next game is kind of the opposite of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's the opposite of Kirby and my number one. Which Kirby and my number one were both series that needed to switch things up and really do something different in order to really regain my interest in them. And this game is basically just the same, and sometimes that's all you need. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. My number 2 game of the year is Bayonetta 3. It's literally just more Bayonetta, which is what I wanted. I don't really know how you innovate a series like this. Just like an action game. It's all about the action. This game has some really great like set pieces in it. It's got a lot of really good combat. The locations you go to are way more varied than in any of the other Bayonetta games so far. The story is probably the least engaging part to me, and seems to be for most people, at least big Bayonetta fans. And I've seen a lot of people say that they don't like that you don't fight a lot of like one-on-one enemies in that game, which I think is a weird kind of complaint to have. Because one of the big draws of the game is that you can now control a big monster that fights other big monsters. And as someone who loves big monsters fighting, that's just up my alley. There's literally a section in that game where you control one of your big monsters, and it looks like a Godzilla movie. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I love it. All the stuff about the voice actress came out really bummed me out. And then when the game came out, I just didn't even care. Because it's just so much fun. I've been having a ton of fun playing this game. It doesn't quite reach the heights of Bayonetta 2, I don't think. But it's still a damn solid game. The soundtrack is phenomenal. It looks great. It's maybe one of the like best looking Switch games. It's probably Platinum's best looking game. And thankfully it avoids all the like bad, weird stuff that Platinum's been doing lately. It's just what it needed to be, which was another Bayonetta game. It didn't need to do anything else other than be a new Bayonetta game, and it succeeded at that. So moving on now to my number 1 game of the year. This genuinely shocked me, because I was looking at this game as it was being announced and as it was being shown off for the first time, and it just really wasn't impressing me at all. I maybe even wasn't gonna pick it up originally. Like, I was gonna wait a little bit, but then I just decided when it came out, you know what, I'll play it. I'm gonna play it eventually, might as well play it as it comes out so I don't get spoiled. And it ended up being my favorite game of the year. The game I'm talking about is, of course, Sonic Frontiers. I did not think I would be here in the year of our Lord 2022 saying that Sonic Frontiers was my game of the year, but here I am. Just like Kirby, this was a game that needed to be radically different from the previous game. Because Sonic Forces, while I don't think is a terrible game, is a nothing game. It's nothing. It's so short. The levels are boring. The story is bad. It's just not an exciting game to think about or play. And it needed to do something different, and that's what this is. The open world format is a lot of fun. I don't think I can go back to playing other open world games now. Like, the speed that Sonic has in the open world is so fun. To just be able to zoom across these islands within like seconds is so fun and so satisfying. That in and of itself could be a fun, satisfying game to play. But it's got all these other elements to it. You know, it's kind of a collectathon, but it's also densely populated that basically anywhere you go in this map, you're gonna find something to do. Which is, I think, the most fun way to do a open world. You know, it's kind of like Breath of the Wild. Obviously, that's the thing that people are going to compare it to the most. It's really not, but it's like Breath of the Wild in the fact that wherever you go in this game world, you're going to find something cool to do. You know, the puzzles in the game are piss easy, but it's a game for children. You know, the combat in the game is a lot of fun. It takes kind of what the Werehog was trying to do and applied it just to Sonic, instead of making it like a separate entity of Sonic. But I'm going to have the same complaint that I have with this, with the mystery game that I'm playing in January, which is that they made this deep, advanced combat mechanic for this game, but you never really get to show it off or utilize it to its fullest extent because it's a baby game for babies, and because children need to play it, the enemies all need to be really easy to defeat. So I never found a section of that game where I was like, oh, I'm really getting to use all the abilities to my advantage, you know, use the dodge move and the parry, and then the circle loop, and then I can make him turn into a tornado and this and that. I never really found that to be a satisfying thing. It's cool to look at, especially when you have him going in like the after images. Looks really cool when you charge your bar up all the way. But you don't really get to utilize it too well because all the enemies are too easy to defeat. The story, it's the best story that a Sonic game has had in a very long time. I do think tonally it's a little weird. It's like way too depressing for a Sonic game. Like, all the cutscenes are Sonic looking like just this sad sack, and he's talking to his friends, and his voice sounds a lot older. Everyone's voice sounds different, which is fine. I think they all give really good performances, but they all just sound so different from how we expect them to sound that it just makes for a weird experience in the story. The dialogue's great because it's written by someone who actually knows how to write Sonic dialogue. There's no Baldy McNosehair. Even though I think those stories were fine up until a point, I think Forces was the breaking point where I realized, like, okay, this needs to stop. We need to stop hiring these guys to write these games. We need to get someone else to do it. And I think the story works really well. The presentation's way better. It's just a gigantic, enormous step up from Sonic Forces. It's got some issues, you know, there's some technical issues just because it's Sonic Team, and they don't have a ton of people working on these games. But what they were able to churn out with a team of, like, I think under 100 people. It's less than the amount of people that worked on Pokemon Violet, I'm pretty sure. It's really impressive stuff, and I can't wait to see where the Sonic series goes from here, like, honestly. If they keep doing this and refining it more, I think we can have some really special games for the Sonic series coming up, and I think the future's looking pretty bright for the Blue Blur. So that was my Game of the Year list, which was mostly honorable mentions because they were all games that were like compilations and games that came out already years ago, so they didn't really count. And the games that I did play this year that came out this year weren't a lot. Weren't a whole lot of them. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear what yours were, what your favorite games of the year were, if you agree with my list, or if you didn't like one of the games that I liked. I like to hear that stuff. So let me know in the comments. And Happy New Year. Enjoy your holidays. And I'll see you in the next year where we got a real fun little playthrough coming up.